You know how sometimes you say there's a risk of rain, or maybe a danger on the road, and those words just kind of blend together in everyday talk.
Yeah, we use them almost interchangeably, don't we?
Yeah.
Without really thinking twice.
Exactly. But when you get into the world of cybersecurity, well, getting those terms right, threat, vulnerability, risk, it's not just about being pedantic. It's actually pretty critical for making smart calls.
It really is, because if you mix them up, you might focus your efforts, your resources on the wrong thing entirely.
So today we're going to cut through some of that confusion. We're doing a deep dive into these three core ideas: threats, vulnerabilities, and risk.
We'll unpack what each one really means, how they interact, because they definitely do interact, and why getting this relationship is, well, vital for pretty much everyone, not just the IT security pros.
Yeah, think of this as giving you the tools to quickly make sense of, say, a news report about a data breach, or even just deciding if a new app is safe to use. It bridges that gap between the tech jargon and the real-world impact.
And what's fascinating, truly, is seeing how often they are conflated. Distinguishing them helps us not just spot problems, but build much more effective, targeted solutions. It really makes you ask, are we putting our security focus in the right place?
Definitely. And for this deep dive, our mission is basically to give you that clear, structured understanding so you can walk away feeling confident, grasping those cybersecurity discussions, making informed choices, and maybe even having those aha moments.
And we're drawing on some really solid sources here. Insights from cybersecurity guides by folks like Wiz, industry reports from Splunk and ZenGRC. We've looked at government standards like NIST Special Publication 830, CISA's Vulnerability Catalog.
Right, and even educational stuff from places like Bare Metal Cyber and InfoSec Train. So it's a pretty robust foundation for our chat today. Okay, let's start with vulnerabilities. That feels like a good place to begin. When I hear vulnerability, I think of a weak spot, like maybe a crack in a castle wall.
That's a great analogy. Or the classic one, leaving your car unlocked in a big parking lot. It's an opening, a weakness.
So it's a flaw.
Precisely. It's defined, across the board, Splunk, NIST, as a weakness, flaw, or shortcoming. Could be in your software, sure, but also in a system, a process.
Yeah.
Even how something's implemented.
So not just buggy code then.
Not at all. Wiz points this out clearly. Things like misconfigured cloud apps or just software that hasn't been patched. Those are huge vulnerabilities, but it goes broader. Think easily guessable passwords.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe network settings that aren't secure, or even just not using encryption where you should be. ZenGRC lists a bunch of these. It's really about how harm could potentially happen.
Gotcha. So it's the opening, the unlocked door.
Exactly.
Okay, so if the vulnerability is that unlocked door, then what's the threat? Is that the burglar?
Sort of. A threat, according to NIST and Splunk, again, is a potential circumstance or event that could exploit that vulnerability. It could use that unlocked door.
Potential. So not necessarily someone actively trying the door right now?
Right. It's a potential for a threat agent that could be a person or something else to exploit the weakness. It's not the attack itself, but the possibility of it.
And it's not always malicious, is it? Like, it's not always a hacker in a hoodie.
Absolutely not. NIST actually breaks down threat sources into two big categories. There are adversarial threats, like cyber attacks, hackers, malicious insiders.
Okay.
But then there are non-adversarial threats. Think human error, someone clicks the wrong link, or structural failures like a server failing, or even natural disasters, a flood hitting a data center. Those are all threats.
Wow. Okay, so it's much broader than just bad guys.
Much broader. And you see this reflected in things like CISA's known exploited vulnerabilities list. They track specific weaknesses, like in Microsoft SharePoint, that are actively being used in ransomware campaigns. That's a specific threat exploiting a specific vulnerability.
That really brings it home. You see the vulnerability, and then CISA says, yep, ransomware groups are using this right now.
Exactly. Or you see things like flaws allowing attackers to inject commands, or vulnerabilities in web browsers, or even issues in file compression software like WinRAR being exploited. It's a constant stream.
Okay, so we have the weakness, the vulnerability, and we have the potential event or actor that could exploit it, the threat.
Right.
What ties it all together? What's the actual consequence? The so what?
So what is risk? That's the key connector.
Risk, right.
Risk, drawing from all our sources, ZenGRC, Splunk, NIST, is the potential for loss or damage that happens when a threat successfully exploits a vulnerability.
Okay, potential for loss. Makes sense.
And it's usually seen as a combination of two factors: How likely is it that the threat will actually exploit the vulnerability? And if it does, what's the impact? How bad will the damage be?
Ah, likelihood and impact. I've heard that pairing before.
It's fundamental. Think back to that unlocked car example. A fancy, valuable car, high impact if stolen. Left unlocked, high vulnerability. In a high crime area, high likelihood of a threat actor trying the door. Put it all together.
High risk.
Yeah.
Very high risk.
Exactly. And organizations try to quantify this, often by sort of multiplying that likelihood by the potential damage or cost. It helps them figure out what to worry about most.
And that damage, that impact, it's not just money, right?
Definitely not. It can be financial loss, sure.
Yeah.
But also operational disruption. Maybe you can't do business. Reputational damage, customers lose trust. Legal trouble. Or, as NIST points out, even physical harm in some cases. The consequences can be really wide-ranging.
Okay, understanding the pieces. Vulnerability, threat, risk, that's one thing. But how do organizations actually manage all this? It feels like a constantly moving target. You can't just fix something once and be done, can you?
No way. You absolutely hit the nail on the head. It's not a one-and-done deal. Risk management is a continuous cycle. It has to be.
The cycle.
Yeah, a structured life cycle. Sources like InfoSec Train, Wiz, NIST, they all describe this ongoing process because think about it. New threats pop up constantly. Your systems change. You add new software. People join or leave your team.
Like Bare Metal Cyber points out, yeah. Things are always in flux.
Exactly. So you need a process that keeps up. It's about ongoing awareness and adapting to those changes. It's really a journey, not a destination you just arrive at.
So what does that journey, that life cycle actually look like? What are the main steps?
Well, if we synthesize across our sources, it generally breaks down into about 5 core steps. They're all interconnected.
Okay, step one.
First is discovery and identification. Basically, know thyself. You have to map out all your digital assets, your servers, your apps, your data, and identify where potential weaknesses might lie. You can't protect what you don't even know you have.
Makes sense. Know your territory. What's next?
Step 2 is assessment and prioritization. This is where you dig into those risks we just talked about. You evaluate the likelihood and the potential impact for the vulnerabilities you found. Which ones are trivial? Which ones are potentially catastrophic? You have to prioritize.
Right, because you probably can't fix everything at once.
Precisely. Which leads to step 3, remediation and mitigation. Based on your priorities, you start implementing strategies to actually reduce the risk. That could mean patching software, changing configurations, adding encryption, improving access controls, taking action.
Fixing the problems or making them less likely or less damaging.
Exactly. Then step 4 is implementation and validation. You put those plans into action, you roll out the fixes or the new controls, and crucially, you check that they actually work. Did the fix really close the hole? Is the new control effective?
Verification. Don't just assume it worked.
You got it. And finally, step 5 is monitoring and reporting. This is the continuous part. You constantly track your environment, watch for new threats or vulnerabilities, see if your existing controls are still working, and report on your risk posture. It feeds right back into discovery and assessment.
Ah, so it loops back. It really is a cycle.
It has to be, to stay effective over time.
That assessment step, step 2, sounds really key. That's where you figure out what you really need to worry about, it sounds like detective work, almost.
Yeah.
How do experts actually figure out those likelihoods and impacts? It seems tricky.
It absolutely is. It's often a mix of art and science. And this is where guidance like NIST Special Publication 830 comes in really handy.
Yeah.
Even though it's a government publication, lots of private organizations use it voluntarily because it provides a solid framework.
So it breaks down how to do that assessment detective work.
Exactly. It outlines several key tasks within the assessment process itself. It helps structure that thinking.
Okay, let's walk through those tasks. Where does the assessment start?
It starts with identifying the threat sources and events. You need to characterize who or what might cause harm.
So back to the potential attackers or events we talked about earlier.
Precisely. But getting more specific, for those adversarial threats, you consider things like their capability. Do they have the skills and resources? Their intent. What are they trying to achieve? And their targeting, are they specifically after you or your industry?
Like, is it a sophisticated nation-state actor targeting specific data, or maybe just an automated bot scanning for any weakness?
Exactly. Or for non-adversarial threats, what's the range of effects? How bad could a system failure be? Understanding the nature of the potential threat is step 1.
Got it. Know your potential adversary or your potential accidents. Then what?
Then you move to identifying vulnerabilities and predisposing conditions. This is finding those actual weaknesses that a threat could exploit.
The cracks in the wall, the unlocked doors.
Right. And again, it's not just about technical flaws in code. NIST points out this includes organizational things too, maybe gaps in your incident response plan or using old technology that's no longer supported.
Ah, interesting. So procedural weaknesses count too.
Definitely. And this is where things get complex, especially with modern systems like the cloud. Wiz, for example, really emphasizes needing that end-to-end view in cloud environments to find hidden vulnerabilities.
Like that hashtag Bing Bang example you mentioned. Finding a flaw deep in Azure AD.
Exactly. That kind of vulnerability might not be obvious without really deep visibility. It shows how thorough this identification step needs to be.
Okay, so we've identified potential threats and the specific weaknesses they might target. Now we get to the really tricky part, likelihood. How likely is it that this threat will actually exploit this vulnerability? How do you put a number or even a level on that?
Yeah, this is determining likelihood. It's about probability. How likely is the unlocked car to actually get broken into?
Feels like guesswork sometimes.
It can feel that way, but there are methods. Security scientist points out there are quantitative approaches using historical data, maybe running statistical models like Monte Carlo simulations.
Monte Carlo, like
Yeah.
running thousands of what-if scenarios.
Sort of, yeah, using randomness to model potential outcomes. But there are also qualitative methods relying on expert judgment, creating detailed scenarios, or using red teams to actively simulate attacks and see how likely they are to succeed.
So combining data with expert intuition and testing.
Exactly. And NIST often provides scales, maybe qualitative, like very low, low, moderate, high, very high. And determining where a specific scenario falls depends heavily on those threat characteristics we identified earlier, their capability, intent, and targeting. A highly capable, motivated attacker targeting you specifically, that likelihood goes way up.
Okay, that makes sense. And the other side of the coin is impact, right? If the bad thing does happen, how much damage are we looking at?
Correct. That's determining impact. What's the magnitude of harm?
And again, how do you measure that, especially before it happens?
Similar mix of approaches. Quantitative methods include things like single loss expectancy or SLE, trying to calculate the dollar cost of one specific incident, or annualized loss expectancy, ALE, estimating the total expected cost from that type of incident over a whole year.
So trying to put a price tag on it.
Yes, where possible. But there are also qualitative methods. Business impact analysis, or BIA, looks at how disruptions affect critical business functions. Scenario analysis imagines the ripple effects.
What NIST detailed earlier, financial, operational, reputational?
All of that. It's about understanding the full spectrum of potential negative consequences, from tangible financial hits to intangible damage like loss of public trust, or even, in some critical infrastructure cases, potential harm to people.
Right. So you figured out the likelihoods, you figured out the potential impact.
Yeah.
How do you finally combine those into an overall risk level?
That's the final step in assessment, determining risk. Risk is essentially that combination of likelihood and impact.
Putting it all together.
Exactly. A common tool organizations use is a risk matrix. You might have likelihood on one axis, impact on the other, and the grid shows you if the resulting risk is low, medium, high, critical.
Ah, like a color-coded chart. Red for high risk, green for low.
Often, yeah. It gives a quick visual representation. And there are more sophisticated tools, too. Travis Security mentions the NIST Cyber Risk Scoring tool, which actually tries to quantify risk by assigning weights to different factors and scoring how effective your security controls are.
So getting a numerical score for your cybersecurity posture.
Kind of, yeah. It gives a snapshot that helps prioritize. Something with high likelihood and high impact. That's your critical risk, demanding immediate attention. Something with low likelihood and low impact. Maybe you address that later or even accept it. It guides the decision-making for the next phase response.
Okay, so the assessment tells you where your biggest problems are. You've got your prioritized list of risks. What then? What are the actual options for dealing with them? You mentioned you don't always just try to eliminate them.
That's right, because, as Splunk points out very clearly, you simply cannot eliminate all risk. It's often impossible, or the cost would be astronomical. So risk management is about choosing the right response strategy for each significant risk.
And what are those strategies?
Generally, there are four main options. First, you can accept the risk.
Let's live with it.
Sometimes, yes. If the potential impact is very low, or the cost to fix it is way higher than any potential damage, or maybe it's just a risk inherent to doing business, you might formally acknowledge it and decide to do nothing specific.
Okay. What else?
You can avoid the risk. This means changing your plans or activities to eliminate the source of the risk altogether. Maybe you decide not to launch a particular product feature because the security risks are too high.
So just don't do the risky thing.
Pretty much. Then there's transfer. This is where you shift the risk, or at least the financial impact of it, to a third party. Buying cybersecurity insurance is a classic example, or maybe outsourcing a specific function to a vendor with specific clauses in the contract about liability.
Okay, acceptance, avoidance, transfer. What's the most common one?
That would be mitigate. This is where you implement controls to reduce either the likelihood of the risk occurring or the impact if it does occur, or both.
Ah, so this is the fixing things part.
Exactly. Installing firewalls, encrypting sensitive data, patching those vulnerabilities we found, improving user training, strengthening access controls, all those typical security measures fall under mitigation. It's about actively reducing the risk level.
This whole process, from discovery through assessment to response, it sounds incredibly complex. Can't just be the IT security team working in a bubble, can it?
Oh, absolutely not. That's a recipe for failure. Collaboration is absolutely paramount.
Who needs to be involved?
Well, WINS really highlights the need for strong partnerships between, say, the development teams building software, the engineering teams running infrastructure, and the security teams. They need to work together on remediation.
Makes sense. The people building it need to work with the people securing it.
Definitely. And sources like Bare Metal Cyber and ZenGRC stress that it goes even wider. You need buy-in and involvement from senior leadership. You need cooperation across departments, IT, yes, but also finance, legal, HR operations, because, as you said, risk impacts the whole organization.
So it's truly a shared responsibility across the business.
It has to be for it to be effective. Security isn't just an IT problem. It's a business risk problem.
And you mentioned earlier it's continuous. Things are always changing, so that monitoring step is crucial for keeping up.
Absolutely crucial. Continuous monitoring and regular reassessment are emphasized everywhere. NIST, Bare Metal Cyber, Splunk, it's non-negotiable.
So constantly watching.
Constantly watching, constantly evaluating. Are the controls you put in place still working effectively? Have new vulnerabilities emerged in your systems? Has the threat landscape shifted? Are there new attacker techniques you need to worry about?
It's like you're never really done.
You're never done. It's that feedback loop we talked about. Monitoring tells you what's changed, which feeds back into assessment, which might lead to new mitigation strategies. It ensures your security posture stays relevant and aligned with your business goals and the reality of the threats out there. It's not about achieving a static state of secure, but maintaining a dynamic process of resilience. Hashtag outro.
Wow, okay. We've covered a lot of ground there. We started by untangling those often confused terms: vulnerability, the weakness, threat, the potential exploiter, and risk, the resulting potential for loss.
Yeah, and we saw how they connect. You need a vulnerability and a threat to create risk. Then we walked through that whole risk management lifecycle.
Right, from discovering your assets and weaknesses to assessing the likelihood and impact, choosing a response like mitigation or acceptance, and then, crucially, that continuous monitoring and adaptation.
It's a comprehensive picture, really.
And hopefully understanding this framework isn't just interesting for, security nerds like us. It's actually about building your own critical thinking skills.
Absolutely. When you hear about the next big data breach in the news, you can start thinking, okay, what was the likely vulnerability? What threat actor exploited it? What was the real impact, the risk that materialized?
It helps you evaluate the security of the services you use every day, maybe advocate for better practices where you work, or even just make smarter choices in your own digital life.
Exactly. It empowers you to see past the headlines, ask better questions, and understand the deeper context of these cybersecurity events. You're better equipped now.
Definitely. So here's a final thought to leave you with. We've talked a lot about how dynamic this all is. New threats, new vulnerabilities like those popping up in the CISA catalog all the time. Our digital world just keeps getting more complex.
It really does.
So if we accept that risk can't ever be totally eliminated, then what does it really mean to be secure anymore? Is it even the right word?
That's a deep question. Maybe our whole idea of security needs to shift. Less about building impenetrable walls and more about building resilient systems, about becoming really good at adapting, responding, and recovering constantly.
Moving from a static goal to a continuous process of resilient adaptation. Something to think about.